بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Give me 1 second, please. Barakallahu bikum. Excuse me. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Insha'Allah ta'ala, we reached up in our text to page number 36. But before we begin our reading, insha'Allah ta'ala, I want us to have an idea of how our teachers taught us al-fiqh al-shafi'i. The method in which we learned was that there was a sequence of books that our teachers wanted us to cover, that they covered as well from their teachers. In general, in Islamic knowledge, there are famous, reliable books that the scholars teach in every Islamic subject. So I want you to put this in your mind as a general rule. The methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in teaching is that they use famous, reliable books in any given Islamic science. The teacher or sheikh will teach you and make you familiar with the terms of that particular book in that particular science. So from this, as we should be well aware now, that anytime you learn according to the methodology of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah, you're going to have two essential elements. Number one, a trustworthy teacher who learned the subject matter or book that he or she is teaching from a trustworthy teacher in a continuous, unbroken manner to the author of that text, who happened to be a trustworthy scholar or teacher, right? So, two words when we're talking about teachers and books. Teachers, we're talking about trustworthy, and books, we're talking about reliable. So, if you're a seeker of knowledge in any field of Islamic studies, there are well-known texts that you should have learned. Or if you're in a state of seeking, you should be familiar with. So for instance, we're studying this book, Al-Fiqh al-Shafi'i, Islamic jurisprudence according to the school of Imam al-Shafi'i. So if we learn properly, in the proper manner, no matter where we go in the world, the people who study Al-Fiqh al-Shafi'i are well aware of the books that we learn Al-Fiqh from, because they are famous and reliable. So we should never be outside the scope of what the Muslims who follow Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah and they are following Al-Fiqh al-Shafi'i, we should not be out of the scope of what they're familiar with. This is very important. And I'm sharing these lessons with you because no one shared them with us when we were starting. So you go through a lot of stuff that you discover later, be like, man, this could have been much easier if someone would have just told us. But alhamdulillah, we are where we are, right? So it is important that you, just as it is important to learn, it is even more important to learn how to learn and what to learn. Because learning is general. What should I learn and how should I learn it? That's extremely important. So those two elements. The trustworthy teacher is someone who you feel by experience or by the experience of others is a trustworthy teacher who conveys Islamic knowledge properly. This is in terms of learning, not in terms of being bias for someone you particularly like. You know, sometimes a person would think that my teacher is the best thing since sliced bread. While someone else would say, your teacher don't even count. You know, someone would think that his teacher or her teacher is the best thing since sliced bread. And then someone else will come along and say, your teacher don't count. So the trustworthiness is someone's feeling. Or, like I said, someone else's experience who told you that and you trust them. But the reliable book part is much easier to identify, right? The reliable book is much easier to identify, and through it, it's easy to measure, when you learn well, the trustworthiness in conveying of the teacher. So in that sense, if you have the reliable books that are known in the science, you can study those books with different teachers, because there is difference between a sheikh of tarbiyah and a sheikh of ta'aleem. There are two different things. You have excuse me, not the fastest typer in the world. You have two different types of sheikhs. You have a sheikh of at-tarbiyah, it's the sheikh who's spiritually training you. And then you have a sheikh of at-ta'aleem, a sheikh who's teaching you. You may not have more than one sheikh of tarbiyah. In our terms, the spiritual guide. But as for sheikh al-ta'aleem, teachers, you may have multiple of them, right? And when we're talking about learning books, this is sheikh of ta'aleem. So for instance, Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, he had over 1,000 sheikhs. Because you go to different teachers. But through those different teachers, you're going to see that how is this text conveyed and the accuracy of the text from multiple readings with different teachers. Right? All of these are beneficial things that I'm giving you. So in the Shafi'i fiqh, we have started, we're still in the beginning of our journey. The first book that we studied in our journey together is this book, the encompassing epistle, الرسالة الجامعة والتذكرة النافعة. So this is the first book we finished, and it is an introductory book to the school of Ash-Shafi'i in the issues of al-ibadat, and it has some mention of the essentials of the creed and the obligations and prohibitions related to the heart and limbs. After we finish this book, we are now where we're at now in the next book in the series, which is called Safinatun Najat, فيما يجب على العبد لمولاه. And this sequence of learning has many benefits. Among them is that it takes the student gradually through the topics of the science of al-fiqh. And we'll go in this sequence from book to book to book. But as I told you before, reading and studying al-fiqh can be dry. Some people find moistness in even subjects that are not that moist. That is also the person's. So we do mix it, the lessons, with other matters, especially matters that relate to purification of the heart or matters that soften the heart. So it facilitates. But we're going to stay in the sequence of studies of the books that we learn stage by stage by stage. Is this clear for everyone, this basic methodology? Are there any questions about what we mentioned? And please try to stick to this methodology. So even if you're not Shafi'i, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, some examples in other schools, right? Maybe we'll just mention the Maliki school, because are there Hanafis here? Usually I see Malikis and Shafis congregating here. I didn't meet too many people who were Hanafi. Fatima, you're not Hanafi. You Shanafi. Okay. So yeah, maybe we'll talk Maliki example as well, because we indicated, and we'll have some indication to Shafi'i, to Hanafi as well tomorrow morning. The reason why I'm mentioning this is so that you become familiar with learning just to learn your personal obligations on one level. And then by you knowing what you know, you will help preserve our tradition from someone altering it. You won't be unlearned. At least at the basic level, you know our tradition, you know how it's conveyed, You know what a person needs to learn. Even if you haven't learned it, at least you know what to learn. And in this way, you would serve as a protection. But not knowing allows for people to misrepresent, right? But if you know, then you know. And if you don't know, then you are available for someone to misguide you. I remember a famous, no, not famous, let's say a situation occurred. Let me rephrase the whole thing. So we are Shafi'i in fiqh, and we've studied Shafi'i books with our teachers for many years. Not saying we're so good, but we did actually study, right? And I would give you some advice that I wish we would have done better. Please memorize. Don't solely rely on your books. Knowledge is what is contained in the heart, meaning what is memorized, not what is preserved in the books. So if you get in the habit of memorizing, it will help you preserve as well, especially a student who is seeking knowledge. A student who's seeking knowledge and doesn't memorize is junk. I'm going to be honest with you. That sounds harsh, but I meant it to sound harsh. A person says, I'm a seeker of knowledge, I'm a student of knowledge, and they don't memorize their junk. And you will see it when you have to learn with them. A student of knowledge must memorize. As for common people, then, we just got to understand the basic concepts and get the framework. But a student of knowledge should memorize. And if they don't, junk. Right? And that should push some individuals. The sheikh of my sheikh, he said this. I never forget this. One of my teachers, his sheikh said, when we were studying, so that's going 2 generations back, if the teacher didn't memorize the text, we wouldn't sit with him. Wow. What a difference, right? He said, when we were studying, if the teacher didn't memorize the text, we would not sit with him. Right? And I'm pushy about this issue because we weren't able to do it and no one pushed us like we should have been pushed. Don't lay hands on nobody. Concentrate over the radio. Just go right over the radio like it ain't even there. Right? So I'm very pushy in that because I imagine had we understood and been pushed in the beginning of us learning, we would be way better than we are today. Way better. So we should be pushy in this issue. We shouldn't have students of knowledge who are half-baked like we are because you don't have the same situation we have. You have people who actually know what they're doing, whereas many of us were figuring it out as we were going along. And we benefited, alhamdulillah, but not like we could have if we would have had, If we would have had someone train us, I'll give you an example. My brother said something to me, I think it was yesterday. Let me give you an analogy quickly. This was deep. So he's training a young kid. Kid is like 10 years old or something. Training them in sports. And he was talking about another parent with his son, where to play at, in sports, what school to go to. And so they was picking a certain school and as opposed to another, weighing the difference in the school. So my brother said to the parent, your son has a father. He's not like someone who doesn't have a father. So maybe someone who didn't have a father, who's not involved, may need a different support system. But the one who has a father who's involved, he don't need that same support system because he has you. In other words, as the father, you're not going to rely on the coach only to train your son. You're going to train your son, right? It's a big difference. So your son is going to get that extra push, that extra encouragement, that extra support that's needed to make him successful in this sport. Whereas the other kid may need all the extra stuff because he doesn't have support at home, right? By way of analogy, the student who has predecessors who actually already did what you're doing and know the pitfalls is different from someone who doesn't have that. It's a big difference. So someone asked me, says, well, what happened to you? I said, I didn't have somebody to push me like I'm pushing you. I didn't have someone to push me like I'm pushing you. I didn't have someone that could say, go do this, go do that. Go sit with this one, go sit with this one. This is what you do here when you're there. This is what you do when you're there. You're lunching, you're slacking. Get off this, stop doing this. I didn't have that. So I was figuring it out as I go along, like many of us. But you're not in that situation. You got a bunch of people who already did what you're doing and know the pitfalls and can tell you. Do you follow my point? It's a big difference. When I started to learn, this stuff was unheard of in our communities. I asked one of my teachers yesterday, he's like 75 somewhere, right? And he was the teacher of most of the famous people, the elders that we know today in the Black community as learned people. He was their teacher. I don't mention his name. One day I'm going to bring him on if I'm successful, right? But he was the teacher for all of them when all of them were students. He was among the first African Americans studying overseas and really studying in the early 70s, right? They were overseas studying. And so a lot of people were talking about the nation and all that. While all that was going on, they was overseas studying already. In Al-Azhar, in Saudi Arabia, they was already doing that. And I asked him yesterday, I said, because he studied for, now I'm telling you, he's like over 75. So you go back to the 70s, that's over 50 years of studying, right? And I asked him, I said, Sheikh, tell me something. What about scholarship in our communities? And he said, there's some good people, So I pushed a little bit. I said, what do you mean there's some good people? He said, some people know some stuff, but no expertise, right? So then he started to mention a few individuals, and he went on another thing with that. Then he said to me, so I ended the conversation. I said, I was just, because of your experience, I wanted to know your outlook. That was early in the day. Then he called me later on in the night, and he said, what you said to me got me thinking. Then he went on. He said, it's sad that we're talking like this now, and we must fix it. But he's old, so I don't know how much he's going to be able to play in that. But he said, you have a good point, and we should really, really, really take it seriously. Those of us who are capable of still studying must be very rigid and focused in their studies, right? We cannot continue doing the same thing over and over and over again and hope to get different results, right? There's a point where we have to say, nah, we weren't doing it right. This is what we need to do, right? And let me say this, pushing ourselves is not putting ourselves down. But can everyone put that up? Because I do understand sometimes the way we push, people feel defeated. I don't know why, but that does happen. Someone told me that more than once. So please put that up. Pushing us does not mean we're putting us down. Could we share that? Right. I like that, Samira Barakallahu Biki. Pushing ourselves is not putting ourselves down. Could everyone put that up? We must get into the habit of pushing ourselves. And that's at every level, right? Even the level of the common person who just wants to learn their basics, they have to push themselves. All of us have to push ourselves, which is the meaning in reality of Jahid to Shahid. Struggle and you will witness, right? So it's relative. The older person may not be like the younger person. The younger person may not be like the seeker. The very adept person may not be like others. Everyone is different, but everyone needs to push themselves. One of my teachers, he said, we read the stories of the righteous, like Imam al-Nawawi and Imam al-Haddad and, others, of the great scholars. And we say, wow, they did this and they did that. He said, you could do it too. You just have to do what they did. That's deep, right? He said, you could do it too. You just have to do what they did. Even the women, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she used to fast every day, right, of the year, except the unlawful days, like the day of the Eid, right? Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha. She didn't fast the days of a Tashriq, right? But all the permissible days to fast, she fasts every day. And they said about her as if she was competing with death. In other words, she's trying to get all the good deeds she can do before she die. And one of them was through fasting. So we look at her knowledge. Part of her knowledge was her sacrifice too. She was a worshiper, right? So for all of us, we should have this issue to push ourselves. Barakallahu bikum. Inshallah, let us read page 36 so that we have some of this text read. Bismillah. Al-Fatiha to the soul of Al-Imam Al-Sheikh Salim bin Abdullah bin Sumair. Fatiha.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, prayer times. The times for prayer are 5. Number 1, the beginning of the time for noon prayer is when the sun passes the zenith. Its end is when an object's shadow equals itself, discounting its shadow at the zenith.
So the first prayer that the author mentioned is Salatul Zuhr. He mentioned a Zuhr because Salatul Zuhr was the first prayer that Sayyiduna Jibreel alayhi salam prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The first prayer that Jibreel, when the prayer after the Mi'raj, right, then Jibreel came and prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam those 5 prayers that were made obligatory on the Mi'raj. The first one he prayed was a Dhuhr. So the scholars, they start, when they talk about the times of the prayer, with Salatul Dhuhr. So Dhuhr begins when the sun moves westward from the middle of the sky. The zenith is when the sun is in the middle of the sky. When that sun moves westward, a Dhuhr is in. And it lasts to the shadow of an object becomes equal to the length of the object minus the length of the shadow on that object when the sun was at its zenith. Let me explain that in a way of numbers so you can be clear. Say if you have an object that is 12 inches. At the time when the sun is at its zenith, you would stick that object in the ground and you would notice the shadow that is cast on that object. Say it may be 3 inches. So the object is 12 inches. At the zenith, the shadow is 3 inches. You take that measurement. Then when the sun moves westward, the prayer is in. As you're looking at that object, when that object becomes 15 inches, Dhuhr is out. Why 15 inches? The object is 12 inches. So when the shadow of the object becomes equal to its length, right? And you have the 3 inches when the sun was at its zenith, take that away, that's when it would become equal to its length. So in order to do that, it would have to be 15 inches. Is this clear? And you can do that analogy by different sizes of objects. Is this clear for everyone? Okay, go ahead. Inshallah, continue.
Number 2. The beginning for mid-afternoon prayer is when an object's shadow equals itself plus a little more. Its end is at sunset.
So this is Asr. So as soon as the Dhuhr go out, Asr comes in. And Asr lasts to the complete disappearance of the disk of the sun in the western horizon.
Number 3. The beginning for sunset prayer is at sunset. Its end is at the disappearance of the red glow.
Right. So when the complete redness in the western horizon is gone, that is the ending of Maghrib. When Maghrib comes in, it is still light outside. It's not dark. So some people, they wait till it get dark to pray Maghrib. Maghrib has went out by that time.
Number 4. The beginning for night prayer is at the disappearance of the red glow. Its end is at true dawn.
True dawn is the first appearance of the light of the sun in the eastern horizon. You don't see the sun, you see the white light of the sun in the horizon, in the eastern horizon. When that first appears, that is true dawn. And when the first part of the disk of the sun comes above the horizon, that is sunrise. Not the whole sun, the first part of the disk of the sun, then that is sunrise, and Fajr or as-Subh is over. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. There was one point I wanted to make before we ended. Oh, Saturday, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Our class in Philadelphia, Saturday the 17th, this coming Saturday, from 11 to 6 p.m., we will be at our monthly gathering in Philadelphia. We'll be at Miller's Banquet Hall. 263 South 60th Street. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So that is the location. It's a new location. It's not the same place we usually go. It is in Southwest Philadelphia. So the Black Imams will be, inshallah, this coming Saturday in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So please mark the location and change of the address. And we'll mention it tomorrow as well. But please mark that. So that's this coming Saturday, September the 17th. We will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I want to publicly thank our brother Farouk Thomas, who came through for Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, the Black Imams Roundtable, and completed the $70 that was needed for us to reach our weekly objective. So may Allah reward him. And he showed that he's not only talk, but he's suit and action. Suit and action. Not just suit and talk, suit and action. Mr. Clean. May Allah reward him. And that's what it takes. You know, Sayyidina Ali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was the Khalifa, they came to him and they complained. They said, when Abu Bakr was the Khalifa and Umar and Uthman, we ain't have all the struggles we have and problems. Now you the Khalifa, it's all these problems. He said to them, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they had men like me, and I have men like you. He said, they had men like me, and I have men like you. Big difference. All of us, we have to be people of action. It's nice to have cheerleaders. It's better to have players on the field. Cheerleaders will root you on, but they're not going to take no hits. They might be for moral support, but they're not going to help you on the field. So for us, let's be players who will go on the field and take some hits, not just cheerleaders rooting us on. We need those people who are committed. I'll give you something that happened to me yesterday. So yesterday, I was involved in a real estate auction, right? So there's some prime properties that I wanted to get for stuff we're doing, but I had some big visions, right? So they have, they have the value, what the houses, what the properties are assessed at, what the starting bid is, and all of those things, right? So as we're bidding, I'm in the game, and it's nice. We're going back and forth, getting higher and higher and higher. And I noticed that because of the value that was being put out, the numbers as they were going, I realized I wasn't just going against an individual, I was going against a team. It quickly, I realized that, because I'm like, these numbers are too high for just individuals to spend this kind of money, right? So this is obviously a group of people together, right? And sure enough, I later found out that's what it was. Everybody was on the field, and you was just one player. You're not going to beat us. Sorry, little guy. But there's a lesson in that. You might got a bunch of cheerleaders saying, go ahead, we can do it. But we got players that's in the game. Big difference. Major difference. Because I was doing the numbers, crunching the numbers. I'm like, this don't even make sense unless they got something else up their sleeve. And they do. And there's a group of them with something up their sleeve. Right? So what I say for us, learn to get in the game. And we need all our players on the field who can be on the field. Right? So, Farouk, I appreciate you. Being a player on the field. May Allah reward you. And all of the others, but I called him out. No, you the water boy, Nail. You the water boy. Water boy, cheerleader with big pom-poms. No, that's with you. I love y'all, inshallah. May Allah reward y'all. So tonight, Sheikh Yahya will continue with his class on the book As-Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path. And we'll see you, inshallah, tonight or tomorrow. Jazakumullahu khairah. Did everyone get their books, Sacred Knowledge, those who ordered it? Did everyone get it? I was trying to delay to talk about it until you actually had your books. Everyone who ordered, did they get it? So are you on the field? Not as much as I want to be. I would like to be on the field more than I am. But, we only can do what we can do. But I tell you what could happen. If you got on the field, it'll make it easier. But you're busy throwing rocks from the stands. So we can't just play the game. We got to protect ourselves from your rocks. Nail. Maulana, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Sayyidi Sheikh Abdul Rahman, Allah, MashaAllah. See, you got to watch what you say. You in the presence of big scholars, Got to watch it. They watching. Sorry, Sheikh, for the bad manners and behaviors. Please forgive me. But I'm dealing with Nail. You don't know what it's like. You don't have to deal with people like that. So please overlook my shortcomings. But one day you'll meet this guy and you'll understand what I got to deal with. Till you'll say, May Allah have mercy on you, Ya Walidi. Nah, I love y'all. I gotta mess with you now, yo. You know you my mans. All right, inshallah, we'll see y'all tonight or tomorrow. Barakallahu bikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.